Well guys, welcome back at ImWateringPSUs with a PC that I built for free back then when I was a little kid and I just opened the channel. This is actually one of the first videos on the channel ever, and as you can see by the customization, I put together this PC for a very good friend of mine whose username is Dawi. And basically this thing came from a pre-built. As you can see, it is a modified Packard Bell personal computer, and we turned it into a gaming-ish gaming PC. Now, a lot of mods were done to it. Basically, it came out with an i3 initially, and we put a Xeon into it, an X3430 4-core Xeon, if I remember correctly, one of my favorite Xeons back then. I used to make a lot of PCs with them. And then, that's the craziest part, I got a GTX 580 for free, because even back in the day, we had the first RTX cards out, so RTX 2000, so the 500 GTX series from NVIDIA was already very old, and people were throwing those away. So how I got the PC for free without the GPU is basically they gifted it to me when I sold them their new PC, and the way I got the GPU for free is I built a PC to sell, and then I swapped out the GPU and upgraded it, so I got it for free. Now, the problem is this tiny power supply. Now, this thing has 200 watts. Yes, 200. So to power the GTX 580, what we did is we cut a few cables and added an 8-pin and 6-pin connectors, wired them all up, but even then it was just booting into Windows. It was not working at all. So what we did is we actually went ahead and did a full BIOS mod, which is what you can also see in my GTX 780 in 2024 video. Be sure to go check that out. And also what we've done with the Vega 56. Basically, via BIOS mod, you can change the voltage and basically change everything about a card. That's something that unfortunately you cannot really do as much with modern cards like the RTX 4090. Unfortunately, you can't quite do it. But that's not the end of the mod, because as you can see, the GPU was 3-slot. So what we did is we removed the I/O shield. So now if you go ahead and plug the HDMI slot in, you basically have an empty GPU diagonally mounted. And then we took off the whole shroud with the fans, and we only kept the heatsink. And to cool it, well, we used the Corsair fan at the front, which is why we cut off half of the front, and this little side fan, 90mm fan on the side, to actually cool the VRM and the memory. And it's still running strong-ish because it's giving out artifacts and the whole Windows is corrupt. So I want to see if we can still save this PC in 2024, because it has a pretty big sentimental value for me and I really care about having it working. Back then, we had a 0.5 terabyte laptop hard disk in it. So what we're gonna do, I say, is just put a cheap 240 gig SSD in it, which costs like $5 or $10. Maybe if we manage, change the thermal paste on both the CPU and the GPU. GPU, I'm not sure, because this seems like a pretty difficult mod to replicate, but we will see. And then try to adjust the settings in MS Afterburner or with a BIOS mod and get the PC to be an office PC again. But we will also see if we can game on Apex on it, because back in the day, I made it for my friend to play on Apex at 30 FPS decently, so he could play with me. So let's go ahead. Okay, so basically everything starts off from the power supply. And everything basically unlocks from here. Now we also have the fan, which I basically glued in there. And if I remember correctly, the fan is also cable managed pretty tightly up here, yes. So we have to take this one off for sure. Okay. And then we can kind of take out our power supply, kind of, because everything is very tightly cable managed to be able to fit, so I will rotate it. Okay, and from this location we can kind of work on it. So first thing I see is we have 3 sticks of RAM. So this we're doing a little upgrade on because I have some free DDR3, which I'm doing nothing with, which we can use. But the absolute most important part is actually taking off this. The tricky part is gonna be not damaging basically the cables I cut, if it makes sense. So step 1, I say we unplug our hard disk. Yeah, nice. And now this, I don't know if there is a screw, that's like the tricky part. I think, yeah, there is a screw. So to undo the screw, we have to take off the front panel, which I cut. I don't quite remember how you actually take it off. Maybe you, okay, you just pull it. And now we reveal the actual 2 screws. So off it goes the zip tie and this, which if we take a close look, it's 6 GB per second SATA laptop drive. Oh, it was apparently 1 terabyte, so it's not too bad. Now guys, just look, DC output, 250 watts. And on the 12-volt line, which is what we actually need for computers, yes, you're reading that properly, it's just 14 amps, which if we multiply 12s times 14, as we all know, it's just a little bit under 200 watts. Okay, so quick CPU repaste. Okay, so this was, at the time, GD900, and it's still relatively fresh, which is impressive for one of the cheapest Teardown pastes on the market. So that's good, but now we are replacing it. Okay, so let's now take off the RAM, see what we actually have in there. I will try to keep them in order. And then we are actually seeing how we can slightly improve them. Okay, incredibly, we actually had 2 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes, and 2 gigabytes because that's everything I had at the time. And I told my friend, hey, as soon as you can, put in another 2 gigabytes and you will have dual channel and everything's gonna run much better, but he never did. So what we're gonna be doing now, since I don't have another 3 gigabyte stick, I only have a 4, an 8, and 2 cool 8s, is we're gonna be putting 2x8. Now, something cool about this board is, first of all, it has 4 slots, but more importantly, the slots are divided via channel. So the white slot right here is one channel, and then the black slot is another channel. That's actually really cool. So basically, we're putting our 2x8 all in the white channel. Okay, so it's now repaste time. We're gonna put a lot just because there was a lot before, but it's actually pretty useless. And now let's put the cooler back on it. It's actually a Cooler Master OEM cooler. Okay, so at this point, since the GPU is so much diagonal, we're just gonna be putting back the SSD and try to fix it via Windows. Worst case, we dismount the GPU and give it a look. Okay, so power supply back in place, and now we just put the shroud in again. Okay, so let's see if we can install Windows. I'm not sure it's like in the new RAM. Okay, so here we are. Now we managed to make it boot with 16 gigabytes of RAM, in theory, yes, as you can see. But as you can see, it's still artifacting. So everything is working aside from the graphics card. So we could, yes, swap out the GPU, but that would kind of defeat what makes this build so pretty. It's very subjective beauty, you know? But so what I'm gonna try and do is actually get into Windows, and then once in Windows, try to fix this. It's probably a bad idea, but I have time to waste. We have the installer of Windows 11, and now we have basically, without reading, to enable the PC to actually install Windows 11, which is going to be a little tricky, but we'll get back once we're in Windows. We ended up going with Windows 10, and as you can see, it's still very much artifacting, so we'll try to fix it, and we're also installing all the updates. Let's see if we manage to. Okay, so here we are now. Don't mind the broken TV on my left. And unfortunately, the GPU is still artifacting, and I will show you exactly why. So basically, if you come closer to the PC, you can see that there is a fan cooling down the VRMs, but the memory is actually right here, and that's actually what's broken. So unfortunately, no matter what we do, the GPU is actually artifacting. So the only thing left is for us to dismount the GPU, and unfortunately, after all these years, change out the GPU. And here we are with the conclusions. Now, unfortunately, the answer to can you still game with the PC I built for free around 5 years ago, the answer is unfortunately not, because the GPU is broken. And yes, we ended up actually swapping it out. I put a random single slot AMD GPU just to be a display adapter, but the GTX 580 was actually damaged on the PCIe slot. Not only that, you know, I put the fan on the side to cool the VRMs. Well, I forgot that on this design, the memory chips are not covered, are not touched by the heatsink. So basically the memory did kind of overheat itself until it broke. So that covered with the damage on the traces due to transportation. 580, I don't think I can bring it back. I mean, if you're interested, I could do a video about trying to bring it back, everything you can do, but I don't know. I think even with a memory reflow and even fixing the traces, again, that graphic card had like cut off DVI slots. I'm not sure we can actually bring it back. But on a more serious note, I did actually test out the PC, and as you can see by the CPU Z-score, we now have 60 GB of RAM recognized, and the CPU is actually working again. It goes very slow. Remember, an X3430 is basically a first-gen i5, like an i5 650, pretty much. So it's a very old CPU, it has over 10 years of age, and yeah, the bandwidth of PCIe is Gen 1. At the moment, unfortunately, it's a decent office PC. With the SSD and Windows 10 installed, it is still relatively quick, to be honest. It is faster than many laptops to do regular things, but you can't really game on it. But do let me know if you would like to see me try to find out a very cheap used graphic card to modify again, so we can use the modified power supply that we have in there and try and slot it in and make it work with this PC to actually try and game on it. If that's something you would like, I'd love to do it. What I really cared about was actually getting the PC back up and running, because I really care about it, because it's one of the first things I did for YouTube. But let me know down below, and if you like the video, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I have many more videos about builds that end up working usually. Today, it's not really a success, but I'm still pretty happy to have the PC running. Goodbye, guys.